Greetings. The last time the kings had met the wrong king, that is Herod, who is like a precursor to the Antichrist. This time they arrived to Bethlehem. Subtext: the kings arrive at Bethlehem. I saw the kings leaving Jerusalem in the same order in which they had come. They left by a gate to the south, first Menzer, the youngest, then Sair, and lastly Theophano. They were followed by a crowd as far as a brook outside the city, and here the rabble left them and turned back home. On the opposite side of the brook, the kings halted and looked for their star. To their great joy they saw it, and on again they went, singing sweetly. But what I wondered at was that the star did not guide them by a direct route from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. They went more to the west and passed a little city that is well known to me. Beyond the same, I saw them halting at a beautiful place to pray. A well sprang up before them. They dismounted and dug a basin for the water, surrounding it with sand and sods. They remained here several hours and watered their beasts, for in Jerusalem, on account of their anxiety and trouble, they had no rest. The star, which by night looked like a globe of light, now had the appearance of the moon when seen by day. But still it did not appear exactly round, but somewhat pointed. I saw that it was often hidden behind the clouds. The high road that lay between Bethlehem and Jerusalem swarmed with people, travelers with their baggage on their asses. They were, perhaps, on account of the census, returning from Bethlehem to distant homes or going up to Jerusalem to the temple or the markets. But on the route taken by the kings, it was very quiet. Perhaps the star guided them that way, that they might escape notice and arrive in Bethlehem in the evening. It was twilight when the caravan drew up before Bethlehem at the same gate at which Mary and Joseph had stopped. When the star had disappeared, the kings went to the house, the former abode of Joseph's parents, and in which Joseph and Mary had recently been inscribed. Here they thought they were to find the newborn king. It was a spacious mansion with numerous small buildings around it, an enclosed courtyard in front, and stretching beyond that, a lawn with trees and a fountain. I saw on the lawn Roman soldiers, because of the tax offices in the house. Crowds of people thronged around the newcomers, whose beasts were being watered under the trees near the fountain. The kings and their followers dismounted. The people showed them every mark of respect. They were not rude to them, as they had been to Joseph. They presented green branches and supplied them with food and drink. I could see that was principally in consideration of the gold pieces which the kings were freely disbursing. I saw the travelers tarrying long in doubt and anxiety. At last, I saw a light rising in the heavens on the opposite side of Bethlehem over the region of the crib. The light was like that of a rising moon. I saw that the caravan again set out and wind around the south side of Bethlehem toward the east, thus bringing on one hand the field in which Christ's birth had been announced to the shepherds. They had to go around a ditch and some ruined walls. They had made choice of this route because they had, while in Bethlehem, been directed to the Valley of the Shepherds as a good place for encamping. Some of the Bethlehemites followed the cavalcade, but the king said nothing to them on the object of their search. Joseph appeared to know of their arrival. Whether he had heard it through someone from Jerusalem or in vision, I know not. But I saw him during the day bringing all kinds of things from Bethlehem, fruit, honey, and vegetables. I saw him also clearing out the cave, making more room, taking away the partitions that cut off his own little sleeping place from the passage, and stowing away the wood and the cooking utensils under the shed before the door. When the caravan had filed into the valley of the crib cave, all dismounted and began to set up their tents, while the people that had crowded after them from Bethlehem returned to the city. The encampment was partly pitched, when over the cave shone out of the star, and in it a child plainly visible. It stood directly above the crib, its stream of light falling straight down upon it. The kings and their followers uncovered their heads and watched it sinking lower and lower, increasing its size as it approached the earth. It looked to me as large as a sheet, I think. All were at first amazed. It was already dark. No dwelling was to be seen around, only the hill of the crib cave, looking like a rampart on the plain. But soon their amazement turned to joy, and they sought the entrance of the cave. Menzer pushed back the door, and there in the upper end of the cave, which was resplendent with light, he beheld Mary sitting with the child and looking just like the Virgin they had so often seen in the star pictures. Menzer stepped back and told his companions what he had seen. Then all three entered the passage. I saw Joseph coming out to them with an old shepherd and speaking to them in quite a friendly way. The kings told him in a few words that they had come to adore the newborn King of the Jews, whose star they had seen, and bring him gifts. Joseph humbly bade them welcome, and they went back to their tents in order to prepare themselves for the ceremony of their presentation. The old shepherd accompanied the king's servants to the little valley behind the hill, where there were sheds and shepherd stalls, in order to care for the beasts. The caravan filled the whole of the little valley. And now I saw the kings taking down from the camels and putting on their wide flowing mantles of yellow silk. They fastened around their girdles with little chains, bags, and golden boxes with knobs that looked to me like sugar bowls. They, along with the flowing mantles, made them look quite broad. They took also a little tablet with low feet, and that could be opened and folded at pleasure. It served as a salver. A cloth with tasseled fringe was thrown over it, and on it placed the boxes and dishes containing the gifts. Each king was accompanied by his 4 relatives. All followed Joseph with some of their servants to the shed before the entrance of the cave. Here they spread the cloth over the table and stood on it several of the boxes they had hanging at their girdles to be presented as their gift in common. Then 2 youths of Menzer's train went in at the door, laid down strips of carpet all the way up to the crib, and withdrew to a distance. And now Menzer and his 4 companions entered, having previously laid aside their sandals. 2 servants bore the table and the gifts through the passage up to the crib cave, but at the entrance Menzer took it from them, carried it in himself, and on bended knee placed it at Mary's feet. The other kings and their companions remained standing at the entrance. I saw the cave filled with a supernatural light. Opposite the entrance and on the spot where Jesus was born was Mary, leaning on one arm in a posture more reclining than sitting. By her side was Joseph, and on her right, in a raised trough with a cover thrown over it, lay the infant Jesus. At Menzer's entrance, Mary rose to a sitting posture, drew her veil around her, and took the child, which she enveloped in its folds, upon her lap. But she threw the veil aside sufficiently to allow the child to be seen as far as below the little arms. She held it upright, leaning against her breast, its little head supported by her hand. The infant folded its little hands upon its breast as if in prayer. It was shining with light, was very gracious, and at times extended its little hands as if grasping something. Menzer fell on his knees before Mary, bowed his head, crossed his hands on his breast, and offered the gifts with some reverent words. Then he took from the bag at his girdle a handful of little metal bars about a finger in length, thick and heavy. They were pointed at the upper end, granular in the middle, and shone like gold. He laid them humbly on Mary's lap by the child as his gift to her. Mary accepted them graciously and humbly, and covered them with the end of her mantle. Menzer's companions stood behind him with heads lowly bowed. Menzer gave gold because he was full of love and confidence, and had always, with unshaken devotion and untiring efforts, sought after salvation. When Menzer and his companions withdrew, Sair, with his 4 relatives, entered and knelt. He carried in his hand a golden censer, in shape like a boat, filled with small greenish grains like resin. He gave incense, for he was the one that clung to God, voluntarily, reverently, and lovingly following his will. He placed his gift upon the little table and knelt long in adoration. After Sair came Theophano, the eldest of the kings. He could not kneel because he was too old and stout. He stood bowing low, and laid upon the table a little golden ship in which was a fine green herb. It was fresh and living, stood erect like a delicate green bush, and had small white flowers. Theophano offered myrrh, for myrrh is typical of mortification and vanquished passions. This good man had had to struggle against severe temptations to idolatry and polygamy. He remained very long before the infant Jesus, so long that I felt anxious for the good people, the king's followers, who at the entrance were so patiently awaiting their turn to see the child. The words of the kings and their followers were extraordinarily simple and childlike. They were as if inebriated with love. They always began, "We have seen his star, and that he is king over all kings. We have come to adore him and to bring him gifts." With the tenderest tears and most fervent prayers, they commended to the child Jesus themselves, their goods and property, all that they had valued on earth. They begged him to take their hearts, their souls, their actions, their thoughts. They entreated him to enlighten them, to bestow upon them all the virtues, and to the whole earth to grant peace, happiness, and love. They were glowing with love. No words could depict their ardor and humility, nor the tears of joy that bathed their cheeks and flowed down the beard of the eldest. They were perfectly happy. They believed that, at last, they had entered into the star after which their forefathers had so long legitimately sighed, and at which they themselves had so longingly gazed. All of the joy of the promise of many hundreds of years, now fulfilled, welled up in their hearts. Joseph and Mary also wept. I never before had seen them so full of joy. The honor paid their child and Savior, and the recognition of him by the kings, of that child for whom the poverty could afford so poor a couch, of that child the knowledge of whose high dignity lay hidden in the silent humility of their own hearts, all that comforted them immeasurably. They saw brought to him from so great a distance by God's almighty power, and in spite of the machinations of men, what they themselves could not procure for him, viz., the adoration of the great and magnificent gifts offered with holy profusion. They adored with those great ones, and the honor their child received inundated their heart with exceedingly great joy. The Mother of God accepted everything most humbly and thankfully, She spoke not, but the movement of her veiled head told all. The infant Jesus lay on her mantle and covered by her veil, through which his little form shone brightly. It was only at the close of their visit that the Blessed Virgin addressed some kind words to each, throwing her veil back a little as she spoke. The kings now returned to their tents, which were lighted up and looked very beautiful. At last, the good servants arrived at the crib. During the adoration of the kings, they had, with Joseph's help, erected a white tent on the hill toward the shepherd field to the left of the crib cave. They had brought with them on their beasts of burden the tent with all its covers and poles, the latter of which fitted into one chamber. At first I thought that Joseph had to put it up, and I began to wonder where he had got it so quickly and opportunely. But when the caravan was about to leave, I saw that tent taken down and packed up with the rest. There was a kind of shed of straw matting put up in it, under which the chests were placed. After the servants had pitched the tent and arranged all things in it, they took their stand at the door of the crib cave, humbly awaiting admittance. And now they began to enter, 5 at a time, accompanied by one of the nobles to whom they belonged. They knelt before Mary and silently adored the child. Lastly came the boys in their little mantles, and then there may have been in all about 30 persons present. When all had withdrawn, the kings again came in together. They had changed their mantles for others of raw silk, white and flowing, and they carried censers and incense. 2 servants had previously laid down over the floor of the cave a carpet of a deep red color, on which Mary sat with a child while the kings offered incense. This carpet Mary kept ever afterward. She walked on it and took it with her on the ass to Jerusalem when she went up there for her purification. The kings incensed the child, Mary and Joseph, and the whole cave, and this was with them a ceremony expressive of veneration. I saw the kings afterward in the tent reclining on a carpet around a little low table. Joseph brought in little plates of fruits, rolls, honeycomb, and small dishes of vegetables. Then he sat down and ate with them. He was so delighted and not at all shamefaced. He wept for joy almost the whole time. When I saw that, I thought of my own father and how, at my profession in the convent, he had to sit up among so many fine people. In his humility and simplicity, he had indeed felt intimidated, but it did not prevent his giving vent to his feelings in tears of joy. When Joseph returned to the crib cave, he removed all the rich gifts to a recess at the right of the crib, where he had screened a little corner from sight. Anne's maid, who had remained to wait upon Mary, retired to the little cellar-like cave on the left of the crib cave. It did not come forth until all the visitors had departed. She was a quiet, modest person. I saw neither Mary, nor Joseph, nor the maid examining the gifts, or showing any worldly pleasure on their account. They were accepted with thanks, and with liberality were again distributed to the needy. That maid was a relative of Anne, and a robust and very serious person. On this evening and during the night, I saw in Bethlehem, only at Joseph's paternal house, a noisy bustling to and fro, and when the kings entered the city, there was some little excitement. Around the crib cave all was at first very quiet. After a while I saw here and there in the distance Jews lurking and whispering together and giving notice in the city of what they saw. I saw also in Jerusalem on this day many old Jews and priests hurrying to and fro with writings to Herod, and then all became quiet as if they wished the subject dropped. At last the kings with their people held, under the cedar over the suckling cave, a religious service. The singing was most touching, the boys' sweet voices mingling with those of the elders. After the service, The kings went with a part of their followers to a large inn at Bethlehem. The others slept in the tents between the crib and the suckling cave, which latter they had also taken possession of for storing of part of their treasures. The white tent before the crib was occupied by some of the most distinguished of the nobles. End of reading. All right, notes. Prejudice and signs. The kings got to Judea and they had prejudices, right? It's like, okay, we're going to meet a king, he must be at a castle. And that's the assumption that the king would be where the kings are, in palaces. But since they followed the signs of the star, it allowed the star to correct them. If they leaned on their prejudice, that is, the idea that kings live in palaces, they could not be corrected. That is why it is important for us to accept what is above us as an authority. And the three kings accepted the authority of the Star of Bethlehem, which meant that they were hospitable to the guidance of angels. That is why they found the Messiah. We can only find the Messiah in our hearts and in our faith if we accept the guidance given to us by our guardian angels. This is an error that a lot of people make in our world, that they think, oh, well, if I go read the rule book, i.e. the Bible, then I'll find the Messiah and I don't need anybody as authority over me. Yet the problem is when they read the book, they don't read the same thing that people who have faith get out of it. They're two different books. You can read the same thing, but if you don't accept the authority of any magisterium, you're not going to be reading the same book. This is just... We're humans, we live with linguistic limitations. Therefore, we can't skirt the rules. The rules are we need mentors. So, and the Messiah is in itself a corrector, and people are afraid of serving people who don't quite serve the Messiah perfectly, but they themselves don't admit to their own imperfection, which means you're not going to serve him perfectly either. And these people are probably going to do it better than you are. But because everyone's... And we know that Jesus is the Messiah because all signs lead to that one point. Now, as soon as all signs don't lead to the Messiah, don't follow it. There is one Messiah. He is the light of the world. He is the way, the truth, and the life. We have to follow. We can only accept something as universal, i.e. Catholic, if it leads to one source. This is why all talks of relativism and ecumenism and all those things, we should discard them utterly. Christ is one, Christ is universal. Next note, the feeling of equality. And this was a touching part of the chapter. It brings people so much joy when the high are laid low, but so much the more when they simply bow, when the high make themselves low before something even higher. In one of my university classes, we were being taught on the nature of rituals. What constitutes a ritual? And one of the descriptors stuck with me. It's when people are partaking in a ritual, all class boundaries and segregation become at least more absent, if not absent altogether. Because, like, when we go to a mass, we're all in the pews, right? The one who says the mass, he has the authority in the mass. He's the priest. And all of us, we're just observers. So we all have the same status, observer of the mass. Well, the example I put in the secular world, let's say you go see a hockey game and you could be sitting beside doctors and lawyers who make a lot more money than you, but they have no more effect on the outcome of the game than you do. So the game qualifies as a sort of ritual. The players and coaches become the kings and determine the outcome. Now, obviously, this is not a perfect logic when it comes to the secular world because we still have class distinctions somewhat maintained based on how much you've paid how much money you've paid for the seats you're sitting at. But it still melts a little bit. And here we see kings bowing before a baby. And everybody has so much joy because we know that the prejudices have just been melted. They saw the star in the countryside, but they didn't see it over Jerusalem. And they're like, you know what? Maybe the king is not a king of splendor, but he brings like a kingliness in something else. This is one of the things I kind of felt that although Jesus of Nazareth the movie has a lot of heresies in it, this is one of the things they kind of gotten right when they had the three kings talk with each other. And one of them said, well, he's not born in riches, but in poverty. All right, last note. Here in the cave, the kings still went and adored their relatives, and the servants did, which is some distinction, but they all adored. Gives us a peek at right order. Right order is basically the absence of darkness, the absence of demons. Without demons around, right order just prevails. So we see this situation and we just see justice. This is justice. Because these people dealt with all of their demons. And we see when Theophano reveres, he reveres for a long time. And he's the oldest, which means he's seen the most suffering. He's endured all of this for such a long time. And now he gets to treasure this moment. This is his moment. And Catherine makes a note like he did it longer than the others, but it was his moment. It's like labor pains. He suffered through labor pains his whole life. Finally, he sees that this child is loving and adoring and justice. We hear of long journeys and persecutions and troubles with hospitality and conflict like Joseph went through. And the kings show up here and bow before the king. And it was, I think, the moment where Joseph's like, yes, that this moment is here. Like, this is what I've been waiting for. Right order. The demons are utterly absent. All suffering is relieved. And it's just for these moments where all that suffering that is relieved comes out in tears of joy. That's it. Ave Maria.